Hello, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to day 2 of the TIMUS Summit, broadcast live by the Craft and Fiolian Broadcasting Company. This is the evening session of the TIMUS Summit, and I now hand the floor over to the summit organizer, Mr. Andrew Franson.
Well, first I wanted to say good evening, everybody. This morning was a little better. Actually, no, this afternoon's result was, I would say, pretty good. We got into pretty in-depth discussion, and so far we haven't gotten in trouble for anything we've said, so I think we're good to host another conversation similar to that. So I just wanted to say welcome to the evening session, day 2. Hopefully we can have just as an in-depth discussion as we did earlier. I'm definitely not as dazed as I was earlier, so I should be okay to go from here. Does anyone want to say anything before we continue, or any questions? If not, then I guess I will just start with what Adonia is going to... Micronational uniqueness. Sorry, I zoned out. I forgot what I was talking about. Micronational uniqueness. Okay. So, earlier in the day, we discussed, well, what is micronational uniqueness for people who missed my discussion on what exactly micronational uniqueness is, how to implement it, the 3 important bases of it. Micronational uniqueness has 3 main important bases to it. One of these bases being cultural uniqueness and cultural identity. The second being political and ideological identity, and then the third one being diplomatic and all diplomacy efforts resulting in diplomatic uniqueness. I apologize. So I wanted to start by first introducing what exactly micronational uniqueness is, how you can accomplish that, and then actually want to talk about the third basis and then how you can accomplish that, and we can go from there. So micronational uniqueness, it's one of the keys to micronationalism, I would argue. If you ever make a micronation, you always want that unique identity, because having a unique build to your micronation is how your micronation will thrive. In Edonia, for example, we have the 3 cultural bases. We have Polish, Ukrainian, German. We have Edonian socialism as our political, ideological unique base. And we have enacted in multiple cultural, intermicronational, and local treaties, events, and projects. Simply being, it is what makes your micronation, and it is what is important and vital for a micronation to survive for as long as it could. So, starting off with cultural uniqueness. What exactly is cultural uniqueness? And it depends on who you are as a person to define cultural uniqueness, because when you look at all the micronations in the community, you see a common trend of either USSR clones, German Empire clones, Nordic Empire clones, HRE clones, so on and so forth, which brings no uniqueness to the table. It brings no difference. Mainly, the clones bring already implemented and utilized ideas and cultures, and for example, using the Marxist-Leninist USSR micronational clones, the common theme you see in USSR micronations is that it's a Soviet Socialist Republic. It has, it doesn't even, most of them aren't even styled off the Soviet government because no one that makes a clone understands the actual government. The Marxist-Leninist ideology in these nations tend to be misunderstood or make excuses for authoritarianism, which you can see anywhere in the left-wing socialist micronational sphere. And to avoid building a clone like that, the first step is to, first off, not make a clone nation unless you're doing a role play, or if that's really it. If you're doing a role play, and even a role play isn't a micronation, it's a role play. It's not serious. It never will be serious. Building cultural uniqueness in a micronation, you have to first identify what your strong suits are and what you know a lot about. For example, I know a lot about the culture in the East. I know a lot about the history in the East, and I know a lot about the political theory and the ideologies in the East, and I mainly specialize in left-wing ideology, history, and implementations that have, through various implementations in Adonia, have made it unique and has broken the socialist stereotype of a USSR clone or a unoriginal Marxist-Leninist state. When it comes to culture, when it comes to what you identify with, Adonia identifies with Polish, Ukrainian, and German. Hraefnir uses Nordic and pagan culture, so on and so forth. Atlia has bases in Spanish culture, I'm pretty sure, and other European monarchical cultures. And the key to building that is knowing what you're doing, having a basic understanding of the history, the ideology, and the implementation of these identities and beliefs, and afterward having complete understanding of new implementations of these ideas. For example, Adonian socialism uses the Yugoslav economic model. It is a economic model which I have yet to see used by any micronation that I have stumbled across in 2 years of Adonian existence in the community. And having the uniqueness of a cultural identity. A unique cultural identity is vital to your nation's survival. Having an identity is how you build a connection, it is how you grow with your nation, and it is, most importantly, how your nation will thrive, is if you have an identity that you stick with. Covering ideological uniqueness, I think that I am more than qualified enough to defend Adonia on this. That Adonia is by far one of the more unique socialist micronations in the community. To cite Laura and Thomas, the only reason Adonia had relations with Hraefnir is that Adonia doesn't follow that Marxist-Leninist stereotype. It isn't a Soviet Socialist Republic. It isn't any socialist clone that many micronationalists follow in the community.
I was going to say...
follow...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to share the term we use, cookie-cutter communism or cookie-cutter socialism. It's what it's not.
Yeah. Many people who make micronations in the community only have moderate to no knowledge of socialism, as far as I know, most socialists, excuse me, even I'm guilty of this, are younger teenagers who either have no knowledge of the socialist ideology, think it's a meme, think it's not serious, and then they bring it to micronationalism. And I guarantee you that Adonia is not going to be the last case of micronational socialist uniqueness. So when this happens, it buries the uniquer socialist micronational aspect. Now, this doesn't just apply to left wing, it also applies to the right wing as well. There are many monarchical clones. I've seen 3,000 different Kaiserreichs formed. I even led one, so 3 years ago, but even I had one. And there are Holy Roman Empire clones, there are I've even seen Nazi Germany clones within the community, and it all boils down to ignorance and disrespect. When it comes to diplomatic uniqueness, going above and beyond and maintaining a professional attitude and having experience in the diplomatic field is very vital to engaging in diplomacy in the community. Even though I myself have no experience, what substitutes for it is professionalism and realism. And as a micronationalist, I'm very proud that I can follow in that. And in a basic micronation and someone who forms a micronation, that should be the base model for micronationalism. But unfortunately, not many people understand that or are capable, dare I say. For example, there are many micronationalists who DM somebody and say, hey, do you want to be allies? You want to join the Inter-Micronational Treaty Organization? You want to trade? And most of these requests are based upon misunderstanding of diplomacy, misunderstanding of how alliances actually work, and most importantly, have no true professional stance in micronational diplomacy. So having this issue of a lack of cultural uniqueness, having a lack of political ideological uniqueness, and a lack of professionalism in the diplomatic field is what is causing this generalization of the micronational community that all micronations are roleplay, all micronations are ridiculous, all micronations aren't real, all micronations don't take it serious. One of the biggest human instincts, basic human nature, is to assume by what you see. You put it together by what you have, rather than go into the abstract thought of thinking about the actual question at hand. So when, for example, I led the ISSR, I had no cultural uniqueness, I had no political ideological uniqueness, and I had no diplomatic uniqueness. I was your stereotypical micronationalist. I was also a piece of shit, pardon my language, but it's true. I was horrid, and coming from experience, that's where I get these ideas that cultural, political, and diplomatic uniqueness are vital to the building of a micronation, and these are all established over time. We are in the basic forms of Adonian socialism. Adonian socialism is nowhere near complete. It won't be complete by 2030. It won't be complete by 2035. It might be complete by 2040. It all depends on when I become a political scientist and when I study and when I realize what's true, what isn't, what I can take from both sides of the political spectrum. And what I mature into as I grow older. During the ISSR, I also implemented the whole "you want to be allies" talk. You want to be allies with the ISSR? And it was always, most of the time I did get yes, but when most people do that, they don't do anything following those diplomatic relations. You say, can we be allies? Sure, why not? And then you never hear from them again. You don't do treaties, you don't do projects, you don't do any form of unique nation building. So having the diplomatic uniqueness is very vital, as well as the political and cultural uniqueness, which I can't emphasize more than I've already said. How to build cultural, political, and ideological uniqueness is a question that you must ask yourself. You must ask based on what you know and what you can do as a micronationalist. You must do it based on the resources that you have at hand, and you must do with all in your ability to ensure that's how your micronation is built, to avoid becoming a clone of another nation, clone of another ideology, clone of another Soviet Socialist Republic, German Kaiserreich, whatever other clones there can be. So once you drop that path of building uniqueness, you start to devolve into, I want to be like this other nation. Instead of being like another nation, why not be yourself? Strive to be what you can be, not what Molossia, not what Sealand, not what Australasia, not what any other micronation can do, but rather what you can do as an individual and as a collective with your nation is how you should approach micronationalism. So when you implement it, you take what you know, take what you're interested in, and then you put it into the binds of a nation. I'm going to tell you right now, when I made Adonian socialism, when I established Adonian culture, I had no clue what I was doing. I'll tell you right now, I had no idea how this was going to work out. When I made Adonian socialism, the original thing to it was just market socialism. It was established the market socialist economy, gradually implement a socialist economy, and then eventually graduate to a communist economy. And Adonian socialism was unique at the time, but Adonian socialism of the past is not as unique as Adonian socialism of today, because Adonian socialism follows a Yugoslav economic model, which falls into socialism, which then will eventually fall into communism, if ever possible to achieve. If not, the socialist stage will be left alone. And having this identity and building this identity is very vital to a micronation's existence. It gives you a better view. For example, Adonian socialism has been cited to redefine, quote, Adonian or micronational socialism. Adonia has been said to break through the stereotypical Marxist-Leninist national clone. We don't praise Stalin, we don't praise Mao Zedong, we don't praise Kim Il-sung, we don't praise Fidel Castro, we don't praise Erich Honecker, we don't praise Walter Ulbricht, and we go from there. Many Marxist-Leninist micronationalists, they have a base in praising so many evil authoritarian socialist dictators. For example, I've seen many socialist micronationalists praise Stalin. And Stalin killed millions and millions of people in his power. He had caused so much harm that even praising him is just disrespect. And it brings me to my last little point in this talk here is, whenever you do anything politically, cultural, or ideologically, you want to be mindful of the history, and you want to be mindful of what you know, and how you can expand upon what you know as a micronationalist. So, 2 years ago, I didn't know as much about socialism as I did now. And I didn't know much about socialism as I did in 2019, so on and so forth. And following a model of anti-ignorance, understanding the history, oh, okay, we have to accept that Stalin and Stalin's policies had killed many people. We have to accept that Mao Zedong and the Great Leap Forward killed many, many people. We have to accept that Kim Il-sung, in his final decade of leadership, his economy failed and some of his policies killed people. We have to accept that the regime that Castro put up stole land from many of the bourgeois farmers, which I will not share my opinion on that for the sake of the summit, but we have to accept that these events happened and we have to respect it and move forward from them. And what Adonia specializes in particular is moving past the mistakes of socialism and authoritarian socialism and moving towards a new economic model, a new government model, and a new social model. I just want to quickly finish it with that I particularly specialize in left-wing political theory, left-wing culture, left-wing history. So I'm speaking based on my experience with left-wing political theory. The same can apply to right-wing political theory, just opposite beliefs, so on and so forth. I would like to officially hand the floor to any questions, any statements, any agreements on what has so far been said or discussed. You're allowed to mute your microphone and share whatever opinion that you have.
So I will say there is nothing wrong with taking inspiration from other nations, but educate yourself before you just randomly take pieces of inspiration. Learn about that nation before you take even a little bit of inspiration from it, because there will be so many cultural and social aspects attached to even the slightest thing you pick.
Oh yeah. Like in this community especially, you have to be really careful about what you do, because if you implement the wrong thing, that's some trouble for you.
Trouble is an understatement.
Trouble is an understatement.
But I think the key thing is with adopting any policy, any inspiration, just always make sure you are educating yourself and learning, because building a nation is a learning experience all in itself.
Oh yeah, like you don't just know how to build a nation when you make a micronation. You just don't. That's not how it works. That will never be how it works.
Or you think you will, and then you'll I'll to use a phrase, no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Oh yeah. And like just the struggle of dealing with that issue is, I'm telling you right now, it's very annoying, it's very painful. When I explain how Adonia has adapted to the Juche ideology, the national ideology of the DPRK, I have received many insults and complaints saying that I'm pro Kim Il-sung, I'm pro authoritarian socialism, I'm an asshole, I'm ignorant, so on and so forth. So you have to be really careful about what you do, and you have to break through the stereotypes and the boundaries that stereotypes build for the community.
I also would like to add that, just as you all said, it is a learning process. Maybe I've said this more than enough in private talking out of the broadcast itself, but I planned Nicaea since January of this year, and something that I would like to also emphasize while you are developing cultural uniqueness is that you have to read. Maybe I will sound like a nerd on this note.
I think we're all nerds. Augusto.
You have to be a nerd to run a micronation, because you're
just a nerd at that point, Augusto. It's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, but I would like to note that on everyone, because there's some people, and most of them are immature people, to not use another term. But people often think that making a micronation, again, is to design a flag in Canva or another illustration app, um, making a coat of arms in any website, creating a blog in Blogger or WordPress or whatever platform you like, creating a Twitter account, and that's it. Start sending emails, and that's your micronation. And and again, maybe for them it works. It is simulationism. It is kind of like role playing in a child level. But my point here is for those who are striving to do serious micronationalism, something that I've learned through this 6 months is read as much as you can regarding the ideology you're striving to to learn from, to learn about, and to even implement in your micronation. For example, again, in Nicaea, and you will see that once I have the opportunity to the lecture, um, we're a theocracy. So I mostly read theologians from the Middle Age who developed manifestos on moral and politics and law and all those kinds of stuff. For example, Thomas Aquinas, right? But yet again, and just to conclude my intervention here, it is a matter of you have to do the research. It is not about I'm going to build cultural uniqueness. So just as President Andrew said, I'm going to, I don't know. Let's put an example. I'm going to design a second flag, and then I'm going to not say, "Do you want to become allies?" But instead, I'm going to say, "Do you want to trade?" I don't know. Minecraft skins. I don't know what I'm saying, but you get the point. And at the end, that's yet again not cultural uniqueness. It is just trying to be different instead of trying to be unique. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
So you brought up a good point. I didn't mean to interrupt you before you finished, but you brought up a good point earlier of how micronations establish themselves. So when micronations in this community have established themselves, they have used a model, or not even a model, it's just blatant laziness. It's, I have a Twitter account, I have a Discord, boom. Discordistan. It's a nation now. We're good to go. We have a flag, we have a Discord server, we have a Twitter page, but not many micronationalists, especially newer ones, understand that state building is much deeper than a flag, coat of arms, an anthem, and a Discord server. It's building identity, it's building diplomatic relations, it's ensuring your nation makes it another day, and developing the attachment to your nation that you need in order for your nation to survive. Micronations have always thrived on uniqueness. Sealand is unique. It took over a fort. It told the British government to go screw itself. And it is now recognized as the most logically reasonable, actually independent micronation that there is.
Partly because there was a British court ruling that essentially recognised that they were outside of British jurisdiction. So that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, so when it comes down to that, you want to look at yourself, look at what you can do, and say, okay, let's see what I can do here. And there is no specific path for ideological, cultural, or diplomatic uniqueness. It is just looking for another solution to what you have already been doing.
If I may interject here to bring up another point that I just thought up.
Okay.
So we talk about cultural uniqueness and how there isn't much in the community, but I've also found in my time here that not only is there not enough uniqueness within micronation in this community going into the communist example, but I found that nations will actually gatekeep things like that and restrict the ability for people to be more unique. Just a personal example, years ago, Probably 2018, 2019, I was very into the left side of politics, still generally am, but back then much harder with it. But I did not subscribe to the idea that leaders like Mao Zedong or Joseph Stalin were good guys. I did not subscribe to the idea that people like Kim Jong Un are good people and good leaders. And this got serious backlash from that sector of the community. I was called names. I was told I wasn't a real socialist. I was told so many things, and it really restricted my ability to bring some sort of uniqueness to the left side of the community. And this applies to all areas of the community, whether it's the right, left, center, whether it's monarchists, communists, whether it's nations like the UNAR, my nation, which is a federal republic. It applies to every area where people will find something and find a formula, whether it's just creating a flag Discord server, Twitter, and then you're good. And they will take that and they will gatekeep it so that any form of uniqueness to come into it is just flushed out.
Do you also agree that all that you just said is based upon you doing your own research on that ideology? Because I can bet those micronations who called you whatever the names you want are didn't you can ask them who Mikhail Gorbachev is, and they won't know a thing about that man.
I definitely think things like that play a major part in it, being misinformed and sticking to your misinformation. I do definitely think that is a big part of it.
Like, part of what Adonia is doing with Adonian socialism is that we, as a nation, have stuck to the Adonian socialist ideology no matter what threats that we have faced. For example, I've had, as I mentioned earlier, a literal cop walk up to me and tell me that, hey, I don't think Adonia is legal. First thing that flew out of my mouth is, okay, you can arrest me. And there's so much misinformation about not just political ideologies, not just how other micronations can be unique. There's also misinformation about generalization of the community as well, which really destroys many boundaries and barriers that people want to break to build a unique micronation. And what Adonia has always done is, and what I recommend for everybody else, no matter how hard it might be, is that you stick with it the best you can. If you can't, that's always okay. You can fight another day. But sticking with what you believe in and following in the model will make you stand out. It will make you better than any of those other nations. And it'll most importantly give you the benefit of the doubt that you will be able to be open to other parts of the community and opportunities. If Adonia was still the ISSR, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been open to many diplomatic relations. I probably wouldn't be in the summit. I probably wouldn't have made the summit. We wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be meeting up with micronationalists in 2024 and 2025. And the list just goes on and on and on of how limited those non-unique nations are. So sticking to it the best you can through adversity and through hardship is sometimes the best way to go at things.
Yeah, I'll use an example of you mentioning if you'd stuck with the ISSR. Your reputation as running the ISSR as a cookie cutter was extremely negative, as we've discussed in the past. But
oh yeah.
Then you made the effort to change, and then grew, and as you say, look where you are now.
Yeah. Look at how Adonia has developed since 3 years ago. You know, like, I don't know, be real with you, I don't know really where I would be without Adonia right now. I don't know what I'd be doing or where I would be. So having growing with your micronation, developing uniqueness, and having long-term can have profound impacts that you will never be able to understand in such a short amount of time if you just put the effort into it and keep loyal to what you believe in and what you're implementing, and eventually it will pay off. The work will succeed for you. I had faced so much backlash for Edonian socialism. Meeting new people. It was like, it's just socialism. What's so special about that? And it's like, after that, then going to Edonian socialism has redefined micronational socialism as something I'm very proud of. So sticking to it and keeping your head high is how you succeed. You might get negative connotations for making your micronation unique like you want it to, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes struggle is the best way to succeed through adversity. Does anyone else have any questions? Statements?
Also, welcome to the summit, Luis.
Oh yeah, hi Luis.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody.
Anyone else want to interject with something? Okay. So since we have Luis here, that means I can present his little presentation for him if I can get up because I'm stuck in a chair. I have so many problems of just sitting in a spot for like an hour and a half, so every time we do this summit, I just move around in my room as I'm talking. It seems to be doing me some good, so whatever. Alright, let's pull it up. Let me see if it's in his DM.
Let me change device because the one I'm right now doesn't let me see the anything.
Alright, I'll give you just a second, okay, Liz? So, to really finish on that whole point, I really don't know where I would be without Edonia, Like, what I've accomplished and what I've done is a very powerful feeling. So, hi, Lewis.
There we go.
Alright, Lewis, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see the presentation.
Also, if we wait a minute, Laura will be here soon, so she'll be able to watch the presentation and then give her talk.
Alright, I just want to ask what that beep noise was because that hurt my ears.
Me putting the phone down because I called Laura because she's outside.
Oh. You have a button? Laura, get in here.
Like, I have a phone to call her.
Oh.
When you live on 40 acres, you've always got your phone on you.
Yeah, that's true, actually. If you live in rural areas, you always have your phone on you. That's like rule 1.
Yep, it's the safety rule number 1.
Always have your... Because if you get lost, you can either pull up your map or... Like, my watch and my phone both have offline maps on them, so... it takes up a lot of space, but I have an active map that I can use so I know where I'm at all the time. So I can know like what street to go down, so on and so forth.
Also, give me a moment, let me change the text to say what presentation it is now.
Yep. So what is Laura doing again?
She's coming in so she can watch Louise's presentation and then give her talk.
No, I mean, what was she doing outside?
Gardening.
Oh, okay. Cool. Someone texted in the voice chat, Yamo, naughty words. Let's see, Yamo and naughty words.
Yeah, out of context, they sound weird, but yeah.
Really,
Yam.
really naughty words.
Yam, yet another micronation.
Micronational organization, but yeah.
Yes.
No, we should call it Yam.
Because there's Yam, which is yet another micronation, or Yam C, which is yet another micronational clone, and then there's Yamo, which is yet another micronational organization.
How do you know this, Thomas?
I just to the fact that next year I've been a micronationalist for 20 years.
Alright, everybody listening. Thomas is officially going to be 20 years in the community. Everyone clap. I'm very proud of you, Thomas.
Well,
no one clapped. No one clapped. I'm just like, you're very proud of you, Thomas.
I tried to clap, but my mic didn't catch it.
But yeah, I've been involved in some form of micronationalism since I was 9. That's when I first discovered it because of the BBC programme about the Kingdom of Lovely.
Kingdom of Lovely. So I love the way British people say the word lovely. I don't know why.
And now Laura's here.
Hi.
No.
Hola.
I feel like she said wah, but I also think she like screamed at me.
No, she said hola.
Oh, I thought because all I heard was ah, and I was like, oh, okay, sorry.
Hola Laura, buenas tardes.
Anyway, Lewis, are you ready to give your presentation on Reino de Atlia? Wait, it's not Reino de Atlia anymore, is it?
It's still Reino de Atlia because it's in Spanish. But in
Okay,
English,
Reino de Atlia. Okay, Reino de Atlia. So, Luis de Atlia, you can go. By the way, thank you.
Thank you. And everybody who's watching this presentation, thank you for watching. I appreciate your not assistance, but yeah. To everybody here present at this summit, greetings. I'm sorry I haven't been able to be here on the first day, but I'm here finally, more or less at the middle of the second day. So I am Prince Regent Luis Marcelo of Atlia. I represent the Kingdom of Atlia, and by extent the Atlan Empire. Well, that's another topic in development. My presentation is called Half a Decade Old, 5 Years of Experiences. Okay, here we have a general information of the Kingdom of Atlia. The micronation was founded on 25th of July in 2017, annual meeting, which has been almost 5 years since then, and also that it's since I have been a micronationalist. Our ordinary name is Atlian, and our official languages are Spanish and English. Spanish was for most of its existence, but English has been just recently, as we got, no, not recently, it's been since we got a decent amount of English-speaking citizens, so we try to also represent them within our nation. Our national motto is Deo Fidelis Semper, which means always faithful to God. This has to do with because the coat of arms and our nation was heavily centered in its foundation on the royal family, and as the royal family is Catholic, of course, the motto of the family was something relating to God. We are located in Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, Coahuila, Tabasco, which are states in Mexico, but we are just like, small territories within those states. We have a small territory, like 1 foot by 1 foot in Maine, USA. And also we have a ceremonial territory off the coast of Australia that is called the Archipelago of Bell's Pyramid. Our form of government is a constitutional monarchy, and we have a population more or less around 12 people. Of course, it's a bit confusing. The head of state of the nation, it's me, de facto, by fact, but by law it's still King Hieronimo II, which is my father. We have a pretty brief history of the Kingdom of Atlia. It was founded by me, and by a tiny bit by my brother, but mostly me. We were founded as a constitutional monarchy, and it was almost entirely administered by me. And we have a president of parliament, then a council of representatives. They were both very inactive. And then because of this, on February of 2020, we were declared an absolute monarchy. Till it was the constitutional monarchy was restored in June of last year, because the council that was appointed by that time was more active than the previous ones. So I decided, okay, maybe it's time for democracy to return to Atlia, and it wasn't the time. and we are here and almost celebrating our fifth anniversary. The culture of Patria, it's very diverse in regarding the people that encompass encompass all through its history. Mainly, the citizens share a Catholic background, which are reflected in our biggest celebrations of the year, which is the Day of Death, which is celebrated on the 2nd of November, and our Posada Party, which is in December. Also, most of our citizens used to be not political interested. They are not interested in political topics regarding that. But they have this sense of defense uh, of vulnerable sectors of the population as um, well, a lot of our citizens were women, so they were heavily interested in the quality of the women's rights. Uh, uh, well, a lot of women's rights. Also, the defense of like original cultures within Mexico. And here we have a small part of Atlantic diplomacy, which I just described it as an erotic action or erotic isolationism, because we have focused of the last 2 years in developing our relationships with the nations we already had a diplomatic relationship. We signed like a treaty of mutual recognition. Like it says here, or immediate diplomatic circle. And only last year we really started to open up to the wider community, mainly since we joined the Solidarity Front last year. Our stance on controversies and dramas is like indifferent, and we are neutral on those. We really don't like, we have never liked that aspect of micronationalism. But also we will get involved, despite our judgment, if our diplomatic friends or someone involved in that is related to that. And here we have a map of the nations we currently have a formal diplomatic relationship. So for the projects, we have this small recommendation separate trash, which is not very common here in Mexico. Next. We have also this plan of celebrating the 5th anniversary, which is marked by the signing of the Act of the Atlant Union, which is a document which finally officialized the union of these territories inside Atlant. But also we plan to celebrate big. And then we have this last project, which is the Atlant Imperium, which basically by inheritance of territories that we have inherited from other close nations to us, from the Sohan Empire and the Disputed Confederacy, we can claim their imperium that they had. Basically, we will turn our state into an imperial state, but we won't have our king. We won't have our emperor. We will have our king turn into an emperor. He will remain a king, and we will not be called the Empire of Atlia. The Kingdom of Atlia is still its own thing, but the Atlan Empire it encompasses Atlia as well as 2 other states. I'm sorry. Also, we don't have a lot of territory. Thank you for your attention. Are there any questions?
I have a statement. I like the presentation, Lewis. I didn't mean to rush you.
Yeah, it was an excellent presentation, and
I'm glad
you managed to give your presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
same here.
Would anyone like to ask Lewis any questions?
Yeah, I do actually have one. Since we already talked about cultural uniqueness and all this political stuff, I was wondering, you said in your presentation that most of your citizens do actually not are super interested in politics at all. Are there any ideas or I don't know, suggestions from your side, from the prince, to encourage those citizens to get involved in politics, or actually just bears with the idea that they are more in the cultural context.
Yeah, we have always thought of ourselves as a community of people who just like to gather around to celebrate these important dates for us, mostly by our citizen side. That until recently, because I made a decree which I announced that every citizen is now an honorary citizen, and those who wish to remain like full citizens were people who will be more involved within the Kingdom of Atlia. So at the moment, we have most citizens. We have some foreign citizens who also have their own nations, and well, those are of course not really. Those are not really that available, or some people that we might say like, oh yeah, we plan to make some laws regarding, I don't know, some cultural aspect, and maybe they are not that familiar with Mexican culture, and that so we can like really not rely, but yeah, they are more like naturalized citizens. So for the local citizens, we have just like a handful by the signing of the Latvian Union Act, and those still have to think on how they will get involved in Latvia.
Thanks.
Okay. Is that everybody with the questions? Simon? Okay, thank you, Lewis, for presenting. Wish you had you yesterday, but that's alright. But at least we had you. Very happy that we had you.
I'm very happy
Okay.
to be here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you, Lewis. Lewis is someone we greatly respect. Okay, so I officially want to hand the floor over to our friend Augusto. He has a presentation on titled True Politics. Let me just pull it up really quick. And do you want me to share my screen, Augusto, or would you like me to? Or would you like to?
Okay.
What's wrong?
Yeah, well, if you could help me with that, but I don't know if King Thomas's wife is going to present before me. I don't know.
Oh,
Schedule actually.
Thomas, did you want Laura to go first, or did you want Augusto next?
See, it doesn't matter to me what order. I'm good this evening either way. So,
Okay.
Augusto, if you have any commitments later, by all means.
No, I don't have any rush on this. Actually, please be my guest. I mean, ladies first.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate your courtesy. I will, in this case, however, defer if you are ready. If you need, otherwise, I'm happy to go.
No, I'm going to settle this because we're going to be here in a circle for about the next 10 minutes. Laura and Augusto.
Okay.
Just because that's what the plan I had in my head.
And I was going to say,
So,
a simple.
Earlier, I just want to start by saying earlier we got into talks about conspiracy theories.
We're not going that again.
I request all current attendees and all people asking questions to refrain from mentioning conspiracy theories, including specific conspiracy theories about 9/11, the Great Reset, or QAnon, or whatever other conspiracy theories there are. Just avoid them. Let's ignore they exist.
All right.
Yeah, Andrew and I don't need a second flail of the day.
I will try.
Oh, yeah, earlier I had a heart attack. I thought I was gonna get canceled or something. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, we had an attendee earlier who brought up some interesting conspiracy theories, and we had to regain control of the conversation.
I mean, it was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, but not appropriate.
Perhaps.
Anyway.
Perhaps
Anyway.
considering the time.
Anyway. All right, Laura. Thomas, edit the frickin' stream screen, and then Laura go.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, Thomas.
Huh? What?
Huh?
You're supposed to edit the screen. Edit the stream screen.
I
That's
do
a
that
presentation by
post.
Laura.
Hi.
No, edit the. That's to say presentation by Laura.
Oh, yep.
Hello, Thomas.
That's what I was talking talking about. That's what I was saying. We're waiting on Thomas.
Yeah, gaming second.
Poke.
Long day.
You're like, sorry, so I didn't mean to blow in my microphone, but you're like, whoa. You sound so scared.
I was just confused more than anything.
So the way you guys like laugh, you're like, oh my gosh, because I was just like, go on, freaking Thomas, and Thomas just like, whoa.
And we're good.
Okay.
Imagine in some. Oh, okay.
Go ahead. Finish that thought.
I was gonna say, imagine in some. It's not actually important. It's actually not serious. So I should just go.
I know.
Go.
Right? So, okay. As of, the same one as of earlier today, basically this is just going to be a facilitated discussion. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Queen Empress Laura Bainbridge of Hrafnafjall. And, yeah, I am
Thomas, let your woman speak.
King Thomas, a co-regent of Hrafnafjall.
And also co-regents of the North Sea Empire.
And yes, as he was reminding me, co-regent of the North Sea Empire.
That's a Thomas moment.
Oh.
Alright, I'm gonna shut up.
Ooh. Thomas, do you have a quip on that one?
I'll deal with that later.
Go on, Laura, please.
All
I'm
right.
scared.
So,
I'm scared.
today I was hoping to talk about, essentially, why macronations seem to be struggling and what are the contributing factors in that. So, essentially, this is going to be kind of a discussion on, why micronations are awesome. And basically, I want
The egoist dream. Why micronations are great.
Yeah.
Praised be the micronational identity.
I will qualify that statement by stating that, okay, serious micronations are awesome.
Oh yes, like serious micronations have for actually maybe not as much, but serious micronations have defined micronational history for
Exactly.
when was Sealand formed? 1960 something?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'd have to check on that one, but yes, I believe sealant has basically paved the way for many of us. But I would like to kind of continue this discussion, and by kicking off your thoughts on the functions of a government.
1967.
Okay, so we got
Okay.
the answer, 1967. But what are the functions of government? What is it that a government is supposed to do? Provide? Why have
So, so earlier I greatly quoted Kim Il-sung on what I think is a serious philosophical belief of mine, is that my God is the people, is what Kim Il-sung was quoted as saying. And I think that belief should apply to macronational governments, but it doesn't anymore. We have a focus on profit and privatization of basically everything. So once micronations came into the fold, many micronations follow the philosophy of the God people. People are the gods of the nation. They are what makes the nation it. It's how people and the nation function. And it's how politics works, and how diplomacy works, so on and so forth.
Right.
So,
Well, that is absolutely how it should work. A government should be by the people. As you have pointed out, yes, that's exactly right. A government is nothing, absolutely nothing, without its people. And unless that government can provide several essential functions to its people, that government has just straight up failed. And I would say what those functions that a government is supposed to provide is essentially for the well-being and health of its people. That includes education. That includes infrastructure. That includes health care and hospitals and schools and making sure that they can earn money, food, housing, the basic necessities of life. If its people don't have that, why have a government? So it's very.
I
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that many governments are stubborn, so they serve themselves and only themselves. As I said earlier, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Yep.
So, in the United States at least, if you are rich, you are guaranteed to have majority power. As you said so wisely earlier today, the leadership of the United States is the U.S. dollar.
Right.
Whatever you have in your pocket is how far you can get. I can cite many examples for this. There was a study done at my school and various local schools by one of my teachers, and I had read into and studied this study. Many kids who were poor tended to do poor on the exams provided by school, so SAT, ACT, and the richer kids, especially majority white schools, tended to do a lot better at the SAT and the ACT.
Right.
And with the profits that I have seen in my neighborhood, most kids that I know went to go to my school have AirPods, they have the newest iPhone, they have Teslas, they have big 2-story houses, and then here's me, I have a 1-story house, I have an iPhone 8, I had to buy my own computer, I nearly gone broke because I did it, and my mother works at a grocery store, and my father is a technician. He works with technology. So we are in the middle, but it really plays with how the US dollar has more power than anything else. Richer kids, as I said earlier, proven by the study, scored higher. Richer, whiter kids scored higher. And then poorer kids scored lower in those exams.
Yes, and I also believe that's not just because of what they are able to purchase for themselves, but because the government itself funds the schools. So, and obviously, if you're worrying about whether or not you're actually going to be able to eat tonight, you're not going to be worrying about your grades. And this actually, it has a huge impact, and education is key to the well-being of a populace, but the governments obviously are not interested in having a super well educated populace, because that is a threat to them. The more you can think, the more you can realize what they're doing. And, well, that doesn't benefit the government, does it? In my opinion, a government that has lost touch with its base tends to become all about supporting itself and its needs, and it almost becomes sort of independent. And that is what many governments need to address and make sure, especially in our micronational world, we need to make sure that doesn't happen. We've got to remain in touch with our citizenry, because we definitely don't want to go down that path. I believe an educated populace is nothing but a benefit. And to have such a setup as we do, I believe it's deliberate and influencing, by the government in order to maintain their power and their control. And I think that, when you think about it, that's really pretty scary. And it's really pretty disgusting. But it's also why I believe that micronations are amazing. I believe that
Micronations,
the way to go.
Micronations seem to do a lot better with local populations. They are a more, dare I say, localized form of a national government. For example, I'm very libertarian. I think that power should be at a federal level rather than a national level. And seeing how micronations specialize in establishing a government at the local level through national means is how micronations are able to succeed as a whole, because when you establish a micronation, you have the reason to do it. You know why you're doing it. You have the problems with the government. You have all issues listed and in mind as you're going upon a...
One thing I'd like to address, you mentioned problems, with the current government system, which is why I think many of us have gotten into micronationalism. But one thing to be watching out for, I believe, in fact, that it's a lot of us serious micronationalists who have chosen this route because of that, and that there are a lot of micronationalists who don't take it that way, who don't see it that way, and that's fine, but it really does, as we've discussed, put a damper on those of us who are serious about it, who really want to use this to make a change. Rafter Free All was founded 5 years ago, roughly, simply because of that, because Thomas and I were looking at the current state of government, and we were realizing that the state was failing its citizens on very, very basic functional levels, one of which was, of course, healthcare, and obviously we've seen that more today with the resurgence of the debate about Roe versus Wade. Should that be federal? Should that be remanded to the state? No, I'm sorry, this should not be a discussion. It is a need for healthcare for the citizens. To allow a certain section of the entire country to fail its citizens on that base level, frankly, is a failure of the entire state itself. And like I've said, if a state cannot meet the basic needs and provide the basic necessities for its citizens, why have a government? So that honestly is one thing that I want y'all to think about here. What prompted you to form your governments? Why do you feel it's vital and important? What motivated this?
Adonia is my identity.
Able to do that.
Adonia is my identity.
Yes.
Ours. Built upon Adonia based on hyper-independence. I am very open about my views on the United States, on NATO, on the United Nations, on the East, on the West, on so many issues. I'm very open. I'm very politically radicalized. It was only natural for me to enter micronationalism once I became politically radicalized. And as someone who has autism, having a identity where I can exercise extreme hyper-independence has been a very big pride of mine. I, for my entire life, have been extremely hyper-independent. Outside of the internet, I am a completely different person. I admit I am way more mature than I should be at my age. Mm-hmm. And I've always been that way. I grew up around people twice my age.
Maturity. That's one reason why we can have this interaction. I'll be direct with you on that.
And having built maturity for myself, maybe some guidance from my parents, but mainly myself, my core values at heart are either values I came up with on my own or are values instilled by my parents, which are very few. And I think inevitability plays a big part into why Adonia exists as a state and why I enter micronationalism.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's perfect. I don't expect pretty much everybody here to have an answer for that particular one right now. That's okay. It's just something.
And not many people have the same answer either.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be the same answer. It's just something I want to encourage micronationalists to kind of think about and consider, especially in light. I use the United States, obviously, for two reasons. One, it's the one I'm familiar with, being so surrounded.
You literally live in America, Laura.
The United States. And so much of it is, well, it's everywhere here. But I don't mean to imply in any regard that America represents the entire world, each system of macronational government has its particular strengths and weaknesses. And I think one thing that we as micronationalists need to do is acknowledge strengths, work towards meeting those strengths, while avoiding the failures. And one of the biggest ones is, I see, particularly here, but a lot of places in the world elsewhere too, that you have this division between it's populace. You have two strongly held differing ideologies, and that's great, but how do you accommodate them both? You can't. Ultimately, you cannot. And at that point, your system of government has to choose whether or not you are failing one or the other widely held ideology. And what do you do in that particular instance? Well, my point is, you've gotten too big in that point, and you need to revise some things. You've become overbloated, and you need to address that particular issue. And sometimes, perhaps, the only answer is to become smaller, more micro. And I believe that, honestly, between that, the strengths of being small, being able to address your populace's needs better, and the fact that we as micronationalists have a stronger community and a great example of what not to do, if we choose to follow that, is absolutely vital to the world right now. We as micronationalists really need to be the examples of how to do this right, how to govern right, as opposed to, well, effectively the rest of the world, which are so busy competing with each other and arguing amongst each other that they forget the basic premise of government at its base level. And thus, a macronation will always fail. As soon as it becomes too involved in itself and forgets its own people and what its whole purpose is, it will fail. And that is something we as micronations must avoid. We must remember its citizens first, as the whole point in the beginning was. Without your people, you have nothing. What exactly are you governing if you don't have your people? Why are you having this to begin with?
When I formed Adonia, I formed it. Many people ask me what's your main principle in Adonia? What's your main idea? And I always immediately think of and respond with, my God is the people. It's a quote that sticks with me. It's a quote that's stuck in my head and is more true than anything I've probably ever heard by any other politician or political theorist in the history of mankind.
Exactly. As soon as you forget that, your nation has failed. And to me, that is the bottom line of it all. What is your point if not to do that? And that's not to say that even in the micronational community, there aren't differences. Okay, micronations who have set up to learn about a specific system of government, absolutely valid. Great. I believe that needs to be acknowledged, and that those are in their own class of micronational organizations, really. So, but those who are here simply to just LARP do a lot more damage for that very reason. We talked a little bit about micronationalism has a rough reputation to begin with. People don't understand it. We're facing that challenge anyway, and people tend to fear what they don't understand, which is a hardship on a lot of us. We face a lot of criticism.
What I mentioned earlier was the idea that assuming and just assuming and generalizing is one of the biggest points of human nature there ever will be.
Yep. If one is this way, all must be this way. And unfortunately, but, you know, obviously that's not true, but it's what the reality of the situation is. We have to understand that that's a basic, like you said, basic tenet of human nature. Your experience dictates how you view everything else. So unfortunately, when people come across those micronations who aren't serious, who just declare war randomly as a joke or just want to play around, that's what they assume all micronations are like.
Once one does it, it's a domino effect and it affects everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why I feel we, as, you know, the more perhaps serious micronationalists, need to distinguish ourselves in some respect from that.
It's an ongoing battle.
It really is.
And it always will.
An ongoing battle.
Always be the two primary camps of those who take it seriously and those who don't.
Right. And it will always make our jobs that much more difficult, which means our education and outreach is that much more vital. But we have to be solid in where we stand. And one of the more solid strengths that we have is going to be that community. Where I may not have the strength in diplomacy, Thomas does. Many of you do. I don't have the necessary knowledge on the basic and, you know, fundamentals of, you know, all kinds of systems of government. I have the passion. So between all of us, we have varying strengths that we need to utilize. And basically, we need to support one another and not tear each other down. We need
This community is so good at tearing each other apart.
And that's the problem. Yep, one of. It literally is, if we cannot come together and stand strong and support each other, and basically, here, I have this strength, I can help you with that. You have the strength, you can help me with this. That's how we're going to succeed. We know, okay, we know the law, international law. We know the Montevideo Convention. We know how it applies. We know we're in the right, despite what the rest of the world says. But if we can't stand together, it's going to mean nothing. So, we've absolutely got to be setting the example and being able to provide those strengths to our citizens. And being the stronger nation, albeit small, I mean, it's going to draw attention. It may take time. Maybe we never see that in our lifetimes. But you know what? Eventually, it's going to be evident that basically micronations are going to be doing a much better job as a whole. And that it ain't just a game. So, if that's the one thought you guys take away today, I think I'll be happy.
I think that one of the biggest problems in the micronational community is misunderstanding of micronations. So, for example, I told the story earlier today. I'm going to tell it again. A police officer walked up to me and heard about Adonia through whisper and gossip at school. And he asked me to explain what it was and whatever. And he's like, well, I don't really think that's legal or feasible. And my first response that flew out of my mouth was, okay, you can arrest me. Having a misunderstanding, but standing up against misunderstanding is how not only you thrive, and telling a police officer to arrest me for utilizing my rights of free speech felt really cool. So, not saying you should do that. Please don't. I don't recommend any viewer or attendee to go up to a police officer and say, okay, you can arrest me. I was willing to go to jail that day because Adonia existed. And having pride and patriotism and focusing on what we understand versus what they don't understand is very important for us to continue to thrive as serious micronations.
Right. We face enough out there without having to face it, each other too, and we don't need to be using the macronational world as our examples of how to behave as rulers of nations.
We should look at ourselves and not look at what other
Right.
idea says.
We're here
That's
to
like-
meet a need.
Yeah, pretty
Right.
much.
We're not here to be tearing each other down and basically recreating the wheel that we already have in front of us. We're here because we want something different. So we got to be that. And we're not going to do that if we keep, tearing each other down and not being able to use each other's strengths to just help further this. Because, like I said, we face enough out there. If you ask any random person off the street what a micronation is, you're going to either get, huh? A what now?
A what nation?
Or, oh, you mean that X-joke thing going on? And basically, yeah. So, no, guys. We cannot be that joke. We got to focus on meeting the need that we are trying to fill. And that
So-
goes back into like I've said, this whole topic. Functions of a government. Work on fulfilling those. And help each other do that. I mean, to me, that's what this is about.
So, I don't want to be that person and say, Laura, stop talking, but, are you
I'm good.
finished?
That is the thought of the night I would like to leave y'all with.
Okay. Normally I would let you go for longer because we had a long conversation earlier because we didn't have Augusto hanging out with us, but I do want to get his presentation out of the way. But yeah,
Excellent.
thank you to Laura for having your discussion with us.
Very welcome. And Augusto,
Um,
by all means, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
so how are you, Augusto?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you very much. Just taking some notes from this summit.
See, now everybody who's listening to this summit, be like Augusto and listen to the advice that we're given because we're giving pretty good advice. That's a very strong smell. I don't know what that is, but that's very strong. Oh, I know what that is. Okay. All right. So, Augusto, I will present for you. That's what you wanted, right?
Yeah, thank you. If you have the opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, I can do it. Okay, Augusto. Let me see if it'll. Can you see the screen?
Let me load the stream. Give me a second.
Sure.
Is it a black screen? So mine-
Yeah, it is a black.
Yeah, it's a black.
Why is it? What the crap? Okay. Give me just a second. Let's try this. What if I flip screens? So if I have it here, and then I do. Sorry, just give me just a second, everybody. Oh, okay. Let's try. Is it this one? Why am I struggling to do it? Alright, yeah, I'm gonna need just like a minute or two. I'm having technical issues. Let me
That's like the key phrase of this entire summit.
Exactly. The entire summit has been. We're having technical issues. Like, if you wanted to quote one thing from the summit, it's gonna be, "We're having technical issues. Please wait."
Yep.
I'm sorry, Augusto. It'll be just a second, okay, my friend?
There's no rush. Thank you.
Please hold while we're having technical issues.
What is that showing? Why is it not? Alright, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna do it this way. I know how to do it. I know how to fix it. Okay. Hold on. I don't know why it likes going to that side, but what the? Okay, Augusto, I fixed it for you. You should be good to go. The Floor is all yours, Augusto.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, there you go. Um, well, first and foremost, thank you very much to Their Royal Highness King Thomas and Empress Laura for that topic and talk. You actually guys talk about what I'm about to talk, but with actually a planned presentation on that. But I'm basically here to talk about true politics. Here on the Republic of Nicaea, believe that there's something going on with macronational politics, and as micronationalists, we believe that it is our responsibility to set an example for them. So yeah, thank you very much. This is True Politics. I'm Prime Minister Augusto Isart of the Republic of Nicaea. And just to have a brief introduction of Nicaea, or the full name of our micronation is the Honorable Hispanic Reformed Republic of Nicaea. Each and every single term of that has an importance. It is honorable because we believe we have that potential to become actually an honorable republic. It is Hispanic because it is located in Mexico, so we speak Spanish because that's bueno. It is reformed, so it is a confessional theocracy, and it holds the Christian Reformed Protestant faith. It is a republic because we are not as absolute as you may think, and the name Nicaea. It is planned since January. Again, it is something that I love. Nicaea isn't a nation established 6 months ago, but it was planned. We started sketching things out. We started designing some flags. We started looking at the Constitution. We started doing our research. We started reading and writing since January 7th. And we decided to establish the country, which we call the Day of Protest, on June 16 of this year. As I said before, it is a confessional, non-traditional theocracy. I said it is confessional because every confessional state holds up to a religion. In our case, it is again Christian Reformed tradition. It is non-traditional in the sense that we are not a traditional theocracy in which we say God is our president because God is God according to our faith. So he is, in some kind of sense, the highest authority of our nation. But since some people, and we respect that obviously, don't have and don't share the same faith, we have to have human having these decisions made in the government, and so we establish a ministry, and thus I'm the prime minister. The purpose of this micronation is to protest against contemporary shenanigans on politics. Also in economics, we have protest against fiat currency. We hate fiat currency, and also to share some hobbies with you. I love this community, so I love to share what I know as a micronationalist and as a hobbyist with all of you. So I love numismatics, which is coin collection primarily, conlanging, which is language construction, kind of like Esperanto, and also theology. So let's get to the point. What is micropolitics actually? What is politics at all? And after a lot of reading, I concluded that micropolitics is the art and science of public administration, decision making, and diplomacy establishment. Now, why do I say it is an art? First and foremost, because we role play. Now, I have to make a point. I have to make a side note here. I'm not saying we role play in the sense that, oh yeah, let's play like you're the prince and I'm the prime minister, referring to, for example, my good friend from Atlia, saying that Luis, oh, let's suppose, let's use that term. Suppose you are and I am. No, I'm not going to that on that direction by saying role playing. But what I'm trying to say is that we all have to acknowledge that we gave ourselves our titles. we have to acknowledge that once we go to sleep, or once we go to the market, to the mall, to the church, for those who go to church, or when you go to class or whatever, you don't hold up to the title at the same time as you are in office. And by that I'm saying we all know that we have to distinguish at some kind point, to some level, between IRL stuff, if you want to say, like, if you want to use that term, and micronationalism. So in that sense, we acknowledge that we role play, and even macro politics. In macro politics, people role play. We will get to that point later. It is a science.
Oh, sorry. May I ask a
Oh, sure.
May I make
sure.
a comment on that first point? It's acknowledging
Absolutely.
where your micronational authority ends and where it starts, so to speak. Like, as Laura just said to me privately, you don't go to work and say, "Oh, I'm a king," or "I'm a prime minister," because people are going to look at your word.
Imagine I walk into McDonald's and I walk up to the manager and it's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm Supreme Executive of Edonia. Promote me.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, but, you know.
I want to work on the grill."
Like, you know, I go
It
to
is-
McDonald's at
it is
the
actually-
store. Like, you know, this is for royalty. Come on. Snap, no.
No. Anyway, sorry to interrupt, Augusto.
No, there's no worries. Actually, that's a good point. I mean, for example, even you know that I don't know if you already saw that video, because pretty much every micronationalist should have seen that. But for example, President Kevin Bach, Molossia, he always goes to anywhere wearing some Molossan propaganda or swag. And he always addressed himself as His Excellency President Kevin Bach, Molossia. So it is nothing wrong with knowing that and letting people know that. But we also recognize that we live within a macronation. So yes, we are kings and queens and emperors and empresses and princes and princesses and ministers and supreme executives of our micronations. But we also, by role playing, I mean we acknowledge that we are within a macronation with its own rules, and we're not trying to make an insurrection here. We're not trying to succeed in a sort of way to saying, you know, I don't have to depend on in my example, in my case, I don't have to rely on Mexican authorities and resources anymore, because tomorrow I'm going to starve to death. I mean, as micronationalists, we have to acknowledge that. Politics is a science because, again, it involves some kind of knowledge in political science. In the manifesto slash essay that I'm writing called True Politics, I do acknowledge that we have to at least know universal history. We must know history in order to come to this community, because otherwise we're going to get lost at the first 3 or 4 months before realizing where are we, right? So it is a science, and as micropoliticians, we have to know social science. We have to get involved in political science. Maybe not to get a mayor or a bachelor's in that, but we have to at least read books or articles, watch some documentaries, watch some videos, listen to some podcasts. But you have to know science. You have to know social science. Politics involves public administration. It is basically making decisions. We are managing our nation. Even if it is a pot, even if it is a garden, maybe it is a building, maybe it is a plot of land, you manage that territory. You are the one who has to make the decisions. Either are good, or either are the easy decisions to make, or not so easy decisions that you have to make. But you are the one responsible for that. And politics, at last but not least, involves diplomacy establishment. Since we all already said that it is a community, and we're called to respect each other's ideas. I lost an apostrophe there, but it is what politics is. Now, what is thus the problem with macro politics? What's the problem with if we try to put that term, art and science of administration, public administration, decision making, and diplomacy establishment, what happens when we use that definition of macro politics? Well, macro politics is not an art; it is an impromptu circus. We all know the case of this prime minister of a certain country that basically flew over the city holding two Union Jacks flags, and he was mayor of that town at that time, and suddenly he became the prime minister. You may already know who I'm talking about, and my point is, politics is now macro politics is now about this drama between Democrats and Republicans. In Mexico's case, between conservatives and liberals. In Europe, between those who want to support Ukraine and those who are deciding to just abstain from the war. No, it is a circus. It is not art at all. It is not public administration anymore, but it is a money-making scheme, and you know that. I mean, who here is brave enough to say, my president or my prime minister, whatever you are in the world, is not a corrupt politician? Who can say that? Who's ready and aware that can make that statement? I can bet no one. And the reason is because we know that they are not managing the nation properly. They are just interested in filling their pockets with money, which is sad. We know that, but it is true. Finally, politics is not about diplomacy establishment anymore, but about tourism. You see, at least in Mexico, the foreign affairs minister, which is Marcelo Ebrard, uses to travel to every single country on the world, and he takes pictures and he gets to know, I don't know, some places, and he goes to sign some treaties. And I'm not saying he's not working at all, but when he gets back to Mexico, he has to give a report on what he has done and that during that trip. And what he says every single time is, we're working things out. We're working things out. What does that mean? That means that they signed a piece of paper and said, well, let's see how it works. And that's it. Some years ago, let's not go that far, 20 years ago, at the 2000s, in the early 2000s, you may see that foreign affairs ministers didn't have that job at all, but to, for example, go to embassies to make some diplomatic missions, to establish, I don't know, a consulate or an embassy, or to attend some summit, for example. All those kinds of tasks that, yes, they do right now also, but at the same time, sadly, it is today about tourism. They don't continue working on diplomacy at all. So what is then true politics? Well, first of all, we have to, in order to have true politics, both in the macronational and the micronational context, we have to acknowledge the role play factor among us all. Within micronationalism, we all know and recognize and respect the role play factor by talking properly. We do respect to other heads of state. As I said just before beginning my lecture, I will express my thankfulness to His Royal Highness, to Her Royal Highness Thomas and Laura from I don't know if I'm going to say this wrong, sorry, but the Kingdom of Norgesar.
So our kingdom is called Hrafnafjord, and then we're also Emperor and Empress of the North Sea Empire. That's what Norgesar means. Is North Sea Empire. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It's easier.
Many people colloquially call Hrafnafjord Hraf because
Hraf works just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make up another term for a Spanish speaking person right here. Let's say their Royal Highness from the KOH, Thomas and Laura. But yeah,
That
yet
works.
again, I acknowledge the roleplay factor. They have a title, and I respect that. Uh, but that also has an end when, for example, they are doing something as um, yeah, when they, for example, go to the mall or to the market or go, I don't know, they have their own plan, and they acknowledge and address each other as husband and wife, and I'm not saying I'm not in your private life, you know that already, but I'm not saying that they are not allowed to say that or to even continue role playing to that level. But we all have to acknowledge that, for example, when you talk to, just as Supreme Executive Andrew said a couple of minutes ago, if you're talking to a police officer, you may want to explain him that you are working as a micronational politician. You are not trying to make a national political party in your macronation and trying to overthrow the government and kill everyone. That's not how it works. Now, in macronationalism, we all have to recognize we're also role playing, but now to the role playing level that we know by default in the micronational context. What am I saying? If I come to your micronation tonight, um, physically, and I present myself and I say, well, nice to meet you. I'm Prime Minister Augusto Isart of the Republic of Nicaea. Maybe we can continue role playing in that sense, and you can address me as Prime Minister or Prime Minister Augusto, however you prefer. But maybe, just maybe, at some point you're going to say, hey, Augusto, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a glass of water? Whatever you decide to address me as is going to, let's use this term, break the protocol, because we're all humans, we're all people. There's no, yes, there is a distinction because titles and entitlements, but even those vanish when we talk face to face, human to human. So that's why I added the note. Even the Queen of the UK has to acknowledge that she's role playing. She's wearing a crown that, yes, it has its respect. It is entitled. It is an entitlement, and we all respect that. But when she gets to sleep, when she attends church, when she eats, when she talks to anyone else, she is also just a human being, just as us. So um, that will turn the politics that involves within the micronational context from this thought of I'm representing my country, right? Without a role-playing factor, all politicians must have to acknowledge that they are not talking for the country, but for themselves. Why is it that in the micronational community we're all so careful about what we're saying? Well, it is because whatever we're saying, it is not going to be imposed in our micronation. It is going to be imposed in our person. People are not going to point to our flag and saying those people are weird. No, they're going to point at us directly, personally, and they're going to say this guy is a piece of BS. Pardon my language, but that's because you are making the decision by yourself. Even though you are representing your micronation and whatever, you are the one who is saying those kind of words. You are the one who is stating your political ideology, and that's what will happen if macronational politics also endorse this role play factor within itself. You will see the president of your nation, call it the United States or Mexico or the UK or whichever nation you prefer. If we get to disconnect the president, from the title itself, you get a man and his crazy ideas. And we have to judge those people like that. He's not looking for the interests of the nation. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that people don't like their nation. People are patriotic. I do get that. But again, we have to realize we're talking macro politics. Excuse me. We're talking macro politics here. So people are not that patriotic if they are not making that much money. So yeah. What else we have to acknowledge? We have to acknowledge that public administration, the public administration necessity in both micronational and macronational context. In our example, and what we are trying to implement is to establish a semi-confederate, decentralized, libertarian, non-democratic microstate. How does that work? Let's use the micronational community as an example. Micronational community is actually this. It is a semi-confederacy because all micronations consider their local laws, their constitutions, their manifestos, more important than the overall general rule set within the community. And although there is no general rule set within the community, I would say it actually is, because although there's no written law here, we all know that, for example, if I come here dropping F-bombs, you're basically going to ban me from the summit. Because although nobody said that in the rules, we have a code, an unwritten code in this community. So it is a semi-confederacy in that sense. It is decentralized since general rules, again, appear and are developed as time passes by. And pretty much everyone accepts them with no particular legislation. I mean, just take yet again what Supreme Executive Andrew said just a couple of minutes ago. What happens with communist nations or fascist nations? We all say, let's just pretend they are not here, right? That's a decentralized a rule that appeared, I don't know how many years ago, but pretty much everyone follows that. If you come by and you receive an email from I don't know, the Kingdom of Nazistan or the Empire of Hail Hitler Stan or land, you're not even going to open the text. You know that. You're going to say, oh, just again, yam, right? Yet another migration. And probably a toddler trying to meme. But there you go. It is decentralized in that sense. It is libertarian since everyone respects each other's ideals and principles up to the point that nobody here tries to say we're better than them. In what sense? Well, in the sense that, yes, we all have advantages and disadvantages politically and economically between us. But that doesn't mean that I'm coming here and saying, well, Nicaea is better, let's say, morally. Because first and foremost, I don't believe that. And secondly, because that would be the most, how could I say, disrespectful move in order to not use another word that fits better. But it is libertarian in that sense. Yet again, let's talk about Roe versus Wade here just for a second. As a conservative nation, you already might realize what our thoughts on that overturning is. But that doesn't mean that we are the evil ones here. That doesn't mean that you are the evil ones here by having a different opinion. That even doesn't mean for us as Nicaean people that even the Supreme Court is the evil one here. That just means that we have to continue talking these topics because although there's people that are satisfied with the Supreme Court's decision, there's still people that is not. And we have to, just as Her Royal Highness Laura said, we have to We have to be a government. We have to take care of those people. It basically, for those who are conservative, including me, we're satisfied. But what about those who don't? We have to take care, in a good sense, with their opinion. We have to. They are citizens too, and they have their opinion. They deserve to be satisfied to their point of views. So yeah. And finally, it is non-democratic since any system of power and leadership need to feed to people's need, not to be established because it works in the West or East. And that's something that personally, and I have to say this, and I will take advantage that I have the microphone right now. I do admire from Supreme Executive Andrew right here, being an, let's say, an Eastern-oriented nation in the geopolitical context within the West. It is a true brave movement, but yet again, this is the beauty of micronationalism first, and also it is the beauty of having a non-democratic system, or having the opportunity to have non-democratic systems here in the micronational community, so that we can have this types of government that fit to the necessity of the people. Maybe you have 3 citizens, then why do you need a democracy? You can pretty much establish a constitutional monarchy, or vice versa, right? Maybe you have plenty of citizens, and you don't want them to overthrow you, so you establish a benevolent dictatorship. I don't know, but the point is that it doesn't have to fit to the cultural context or the international context. In the macro politics, it has to be the same. Why is that every single nation wants to have democracy? And let's be honest here. Maybe I'm going to be, and I'm finishing up, right? Let's be honest right here for a second. We all know that there's people on this planet that cast their votes based on this guy looks nice, or this lady is not as old as people say. Those are their opinions, and those are the arguments in order to cast their votes in favor of someone while they're going vote. And that's why, for example, in Nicaea's case, something that we are trying to do is to constitute an oligarchy. Those who can prove themselves to be worthy of casting a vote, an impartial and objective vote, are going to have the right to cast their vote. But if you're here to meme and to joke, why is that I'm obligated to give you an opportunity to vote if you're going to joke with my serious, just as Her Royal Highness said. I'm being serious. Why are you not? And thus, why am I obligated to give you this opportunity to participate with me? But in any case, moving forward, we have to acknowledge the public administration necessity in both micronational and macronational contexts. We already talked about this, and I said it could be through microstates. Yes, maybe I'm sounding too southernish for those who know American history, but I think that actually confederacy is kind of like a good system in order to begin with microstates. And why I say that microstates would be better than a full-blown republic, as, for example, the United States or China or Russia is right now? Well, first of all, because it is political pragmatism. It works, guys. If you see any local organization, let's say in my case, a local church, it works because it is based in few people, and so everyone knows each other, and that moves to, if everyone knows each other, secondly, pragmatistic administration. I know who's the guy who can manage this local assembly better. That would be the same case with microstates. We know the guy. We just, it is not only that we heard about him in television or in radio. No, we know him. He's our neighbor. What's what first and foremost politics were at ancient times. And we lost that because television came. And we decided to rule our nation. And sorry, America, but manifest destiny, right? And that's their consequence. And finally, and I say this is the most important part of this pragmatistic law enforcement. If you have a microstate, you won't need to enforce your law as much as you would have to if you are in a macro nation. Why is it? Well, first and foremost, because people know each other. And so I know who's the guy who is being a piece of crap, to pardon my language, to everyone else in this microstate, for example, and thus we have to enforce our law here. But everyone else is good to each other, right? Yes? Oh, perfect. Everything is working so far. Fine. So, yeah, that's our proposal in True Politics. Yet again, I don't want to say that this has to be done. When we had the opportunity at TIMUS to register ourselves, we decided that we want to put on the table our thoughts on political science as of today. We're still growing, as I said to Supreme Executive Andrew, we're still learning. So if you have any comments, any suggestions, I would say any questions, but again, I think we're the youngest micronation here. So although that question might be about Nicaea, that would be awesome. But in other case, I'm willing to accept your comments, your suggestions, and even your complaints. If you have any, we're here to learn. And thank you very much. That's us.
So I have some commentary here. It's honestly refreshing, and I think the folks here who've been around micronationalism for a bit will agree. It's a very refreshing view to have from a new micronation. The views you've expressed here. It's some of your presentation read as knowing, as I mentioned earlier, knowing where your micronational authority ends, but at the same time being proud of the positions you hold in your nation. Furthermore, your comment about public administration, especially laws and enforcement of, mostly, a lot of the time people will join a micronation that they already share cultural, ideological, or other values with, and therefore are generally going to follow the laws of that nation because they already fall within their own ideological, cultural, or moralistic worldviews. So, the only time you really have to enforce your laws is if, quote-unquote, outsiders come onto your micronational territory. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I decided to put that in the presentation regardless, because although I think that, I do actually believe that in my case, I always say in our case, but I don't know if I said that in live last time or not, but I'm the only citizen right now. As of today, we're not accepting citizenship applications. First and foremost, we're still learning. I don't want to overwhelm myself.
No, that makes sense.
With citizenship applications and all that kind of stuff. So before that happens, I want to get, maybe not everything, because we can't know everything, but as much as I can about law enforcement. Again, not to say we have to law enforce or we have to enforce our law. There's no need for that. But in the macro-national context, there's, and you know that, there's an urgent need to enforce the law. Problem is, it hasn't been done. And why is it? Because we are in a full blown millions upon millions of acres and square feet of land. So how do you sort that out? Well, you divide it. You divide it, and through local governments, it is easier. And that's why I added that. But you have a good point on micronational in the micronational context.
Yes, as I mentioned, it's part of the key is remaining small and being able to maintain that span of control. Also, might I just add that politics is not an art anymore, but an impromptu circus is perhaps one of the most apt phrases I have heard today in this whole session in a long time, in point of fact. I applaud that one.
Well, thank you very much. I'm thrilled. Thank you very much for that.
I just wanted to say it's very base to have another micronationalist be interested in political theory and political science. So not being alone is very nice.
Honestly, I think most micronationalists should have at least a basic grounding in political theory and political science, because you have to understand how methods of governance work to know what works best for you. So, more should be like you two.
I mean, I do believe that it is, again, it is the most basic thing you can do as a micronationalist. You're basically telling the community, let's say, for example, Reddit, although pretty much our micronations became a show and tell your flag. But let's say that our micronations is based and people actually use it in the way it was intended to be. It should be a discussion about politics, because as a micronationalist, you are a politician, and people doesn't get that. People often don't or doesn't. Well, they don't get that. You get the point. And it's like saying, you know what? I'm going to become a carpenter, but I don't know anything about wood at all. Or I'm becoming, I'm starting coin collections and not knowing anything about numismatics at all. So it is kind of ironic, and even let's say let me use this phrase. It is even, at least for some of us, and I include myself in that, even disrespectful to see people that try to be as realistic as they can, but also have a word against knowing about politics. And I'm not saying that there's people that people that doesn't know politics are wrong. There are people who sincerely are trying to do their best with politics and micronationalism. But if you have time here in the community, I think that it is something that you need to know. Again, maybe just a brief survey of universal history or American history or British history, whatever you are. But it is at least the common ground on which all of us have our political views on. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Is there any other commentary we'd like to add? Anything we would like to say? If not, then hey, that was a very good evening session.
And it's
I'm very happy with how that turned out.
I was going to say, it's been our longest session yet.
Oh yeah, 2 hours.
I would also like to add my personal respect towards the recent presentation and presenter. Very well done. Very well done. And frankly, I think you've got a lot of promise.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and well, I hope that Nicaea prospers as much as you all expect. I truly want that for my micronation.
Anything you need, reach out. We're here.
Yeah, we got your back. We got your back, Augusto.
Money.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to say that.
We got your back, Augusto.
There's a very strong diplomatic community that is Andrew, myself, and Louise are part of a very strong diplomatic community as is, so there's a lot of knowledge that you could have access to there.
And may I add that for me to basically add my support and basically for you to have my respect this early on, you can ask it pretty much anyone else. That really actually means.
You get it from Augusto. I don't know what you did, but you got it from Lauren. That's kind of scary for someone who's new.
Yeah, exactly. I don't give that very often, so.
I'll have to link you to some of Laura's writings at some point. Laura can be very critical of other micronations.
Yeah, but you're
Laura can be very
on the
scary.
right path, in my opinion.
By
Laura can be
being
very scary.
conservative, I'm scared, but thank you very much. I'm thrilled.
We should be scared. You don't know if Laura's gonna change her mind tomorrow.
Shots! Okay, but with that,